Okay, so this is video number 2 in the installment of uh, tips and tricks to directly improve your win rate in League of Legends solo queue. So the big idea for this one is that the times that you play are just as important as the times that you play. Let me explain. So here the big ideas are that you want to play specifically at the beginning of seasons, at the end of seasons, and around international conferences like Worlds. These increase your probability of winning, assuming that, again, you're the better player or the more cooperative player. At the beginning of the season, you see an influx of players at higher skill ratings, at ratings lower than their MMR would otherwise dictate, which means that on average you're getting higher quality games. So, and this is all due to the ranked reset as well. So what this means is that, let's say that you start the season rated at Iron, for example. Well, you're going to probably encounter players as far as Bronze and even Silver that are also at that rating 2 at the start of the season because of the ranked reset. And then as you get to Bronze in that early season stage, there are some people who have still not started their ranked climb for the year, which means that when they begin, they'll be at the same rating that you have climbed to, right? So all in all, it makes things a lot easier just in general. During the end of the season is when you start to see players really begin to grind again, pulling out all the stops because they want to reach their end of year goal, right? Either reaching their peak ranks again or finally reaching the next tier. So let's say that they're on the cusp of reaching gold, for example, and getting the Victoria skin. I mean, now as long as you just play as many games as you need to, you'll reach the skin. But getting the chroma might be enough of an incentive for players to try even harder. So with this in mind, getting to the next rating, or the next division, I should say, is actually a lot easier at the end of the season than you might otherwise anticipate. However, it might be particularly challenging being in the middle of those ranks because most players have already decided to, I guess, use their stop loss function, or they're just planning to take their earnings from the season, so they might not try as hard. But in general, if you're either at the first division or the fourth division of any given rating, you should expect to have a lot of people trying even harder. The also secret caveat is that this is when a lot of players who are pretty bad decide to cave in and pay for rank boosts, and also other cheating services as a last ditch effort. So you're also going to encounter more games where maybe you have people who are of higher skill, but just in general, you'll have fewer players that are intentionally sabotaging games on average, because the players who are playing for fun are probably just going to keep their ratings as it is. And you have more players who are actually playing purposefully at the stage. Right. The last point is that around international conferences, particularly Worlds, you'll find that players on average play a lot better. My assumption for this reason is that more players are watching these international conferences, and just the idea of watching highly coordinated play is enough to influence players to be themselves more cooperative in a ranked situation. The reason for this, I think, number one, I see this pattern pretty consistently. Again, I've clocked in a lot of games over many years of time throughout the season, and I can consistently tell you that whenever Worlds comes around, you see players that are a lot more willing to work with you on average in this time. Um, but in addition to that, you also see players that are choosing like novel um, champion choices that, in general, um, lean towards more team play and coordination. For example, seeing somebody choose, I don't know, like an Oriana in the middle lane instead of blind picking Yasuo without any like knockups on the team. You know what I mean? So, for example, players choosing to pick a champion like Poppy top lane, as opposed to going for like a split push champion like the Yorick pick, for example. Um, so in all, you see a lot more of a team focus, and I truly do believe that it's because of the fact that players everywhere in these international conferences are looking at highly coordinated play and then deciding to themselves that this is motivating me to pick up the game, play a competitive game mode, and to throw my hat into the ring and to see how I perform, right? So, with that in mind, it's a pretty good idea to try to play around these times because that's when you'll get the highest quality League of Legends games, you know? So, I would definitely recommend playing around World's Time, and to complete the recap, um, playing around season start and playing around season end. Okay, now getting into the super specifics, right? So people say that you can't time the market, right? Time in the market beats timing the market, of course, right? Um, but there are certain things about League that aren't market principles, and I think that the timing is actually one of the components of that. So, for example, if you're operating outside of the time windows previously described, so not the season start, not around an international conference, and not the end of the season, right? Um, then you need to play your weeks just as much as you play a draft and just as much as you play the game, okay? So weekends includes Friday evenings as well. Just putting that out there. In terms of other times when you just probably shouldn't play, um, again, this is from like my experience, is during the weekdays, immediately after school times, like around when students start to like come back home. Uh, that's a time when you probably shouldn't like play too much because then again you run into a markedly younger demographic, which for the reasons described beforehand might present a little bit of an issue, right? Additionally, around dinner times as well, you do notice that like player performance tends to drop off, and you know, maybe it's a good time to grab a snack or take a break as well around those times. Also, in the late nights, like in the AMs, this is typically when I play. Um, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes you run into players who are very like appropriately placed, let's say, and you get some pretty good matches. Other times you get uh, like smurfs and people trying to run under the radar, right? You also get a lot of rank disparities because no one is really playing during those times. So it's certainly a bit of a balance. I would say that if possible, um, play during the day early on, right? So let's say um, during times that coincide with when like a school day might be, right? Or let's say that you have a day free from work and you just want to like relax, then playing League around the same times as well with other adults who are on their day off, right? That's how you get like the best quality games. That's not to say that you can't play like throughout the days during the week from like Monday through Thursday. Those are the optimal times, I will say, but just make sure that You're, very cautious about the time right after students are out of school, because that's when you see the majority of players being younger students. Um, and also just be cautious around like dinner time, I would say. Um, and also listen to your own body, listen to yourself about like how late you can play while maintaining performance as well. So that's my advice. So play Monday through Thursday, avoid weekends, um, and whenever possible, limit your playing towards uh, earlier times when, you know, yeah, yeah, you get me. The last curveball is going to be Clash. Um, so Clash works a little bit like how Worlds would, where you might expect a higher level of cooperation and coordination from the player base, and that is true, but only leading up into lock-in, right? I have this down to a science, guys. I have this down to a science. Players are actually very willing to work on their coordination in solo queue environments leading up until like the Clash lock-in phase. But during that time and then the time going afterwards, um, you notice like a heavy fall off in coordination. And my assumption is that's because the players who are really into the game for the coordination aspect are playing Clash. They're on a team trying to win in a highly coordinated environment, right? Um, Everyone else who's playing ranked are playing probably because they don't really have anyone to play with or a team to play with. Um, and so you're again stuck in some pretty nasty and toxic lobbies that are worse than on an average day or an average time, right? And again, Clash typically takes place over the weekends, which is, a time when you typically might not want to be playing anyway. Um, so now encountering this highly toxic environment post uh, post lock-in stage is even more of a reason to just, you know, stop losses. Plug the holes in your LP bucket. You know what I mean? Okay, I realized that I forgot one important point about the like playing during the week times. Um, so yes, play early throughout the day if possible, but the other time that's really good is like around bedtimes as well. Um, the reason why is because that's when the younger audience typically goes to sleep, right, to prepare for the next day. Um, it's also when a lot of adults who are coming back from maybe like all of their responsibilities or something, or tucking their kids into bed, right? Um, or like making the meal and everyone's off into their own space, right? That's when they start to pick up the game again, so you get a higher probability of running into like adults in your games, which, for the reasons mentioned previously, would lead to some reliable, less volatile games of higher quality, right? Not to say that the youngsters playing the game aren't good, because a lot of them are, right? It's just, again, if you're a solo queue player coming back from like a day at work or something, you want to give yourself the best shot, right?